How should we vet incoming immigrants, especially from hostile countries or perceived hostile countries in the Middle East and abroad? How many immigrants should we take each year? How do we deal with illegal border crossing from places like Mexico? You might think that immigration is a new problem, but it's not. So let's take a look at immigration in the 1800s and early 1900s. 1800s, early 1900s, tons of Europeans flooded the Americas. And we even get a wave of Asian immigrants. The technology of the time can get them here in about 14 days, give or take, depending on the vessel and the voyage. Many of these people saved up a long time to have the resources to make the trip. A lot of these people could only afford to travel in the absolute worst conditions. When I say worst conditions, it's not Middle Passage-ish. It's cramped, hot, poor ventilation, kind of smelly, small sleeping quarters, bunk type things, not comfortable in the least. I like to look at it as what they're running from and what they're running to. What are they running from? Some of the basics. Religious oppression, racial discrimination. Those things were still around in pockets of Europe, especially as some of those European countries are building empires. Some of the members of those empires are the ethnic minority or the second or third class. Some countries also had military service that was mandated for every citizen. Now, in a lot of countries that have a good patriotism, that's not a big deal. But when you couple that with maybe corrupt leadership or empire building or unnecessary wars, people a lot of times don't want to participate in military service just for wars of conquest, wars that are going to help the leadership, but it's not going to help the populace. Let's annex this other area and give that area our jobs. That people would rather leave. There was still hunger and famine in certain places. A number of Irish people, usually from rural areas, immigrating to the United States, and a lot of them have to be put into urban areas where they don't necessarily have the urban skills. What's pulling them to the United States? The United States at the time has a ton of land. There's a ton of land. So some of them are thinking, hey, I could avoid these problems, but I could also raise my social status and own a piece of a country, own land that I can call my own, I can give to my kids. This was very attractive to them. Also, the land of opportunity, the land of freedoms, that certain things weren't mandated, certain laws and harsh punishments wouldn't befall them, was attractive to people that were persecuted in other countries. A land that's diverse. This is pulling people in. Hey, this is a place where me being Jewish, me being whatever, is not going to be a big problem. America's an industrialized country. Building the railroads brought a lot of Asians and put a lot of Asians to work. When large government-supported farms pop up, Mexicans and migrant workers help those farmers in various harvest seasons. Depression and recession in some of those countries. We're not the only country that has gone through economic ups and downs. Other countries, because they industrialized, when a country industrializes, it changes the economy completely. And if you don't make the necessary changes, it's very easy for the working man, the proletariat, to be taken advantage by big business, the factory owner. Think about what our lives would be if there was no minimum wage, if there's no child labor laws, if there was no OSHA. These things protect the worker. So when they got here, they landed, they were sent to Ellis Island if they came to the East Coast. Ellis Island, off the coast of New York, was like a holding tank that immigrants were filtered through and processed as quick as they could. They had a physical exam, they had other exams. Literacy became one of the big things. And people, unfortunately, sometimes got sent home for a hernia, got sent home for Sounds like he has mental problems. We gotta send him back. You could get separated from your family. The shed at the wharf and Angel Island were kind of the West Coast version of Ellis Island. One of the things you see is you see these ethnic cities. In the big cities, people cluster in their different ethnic groups in different parts of the city. Why? Because they could keep some of their customs and not be looked at as different, as outsider. The Irish, who were very much fair complected, weren't even considered white. In some portions of the country, Irish people were discriminated as heavily as African Americans. But no, they were Catholic, they were not born here, they were poor, they're taking the lower jobs, and I have family that needs those low-paying starter jobs, whatever. Jewish communities, Asian communities. Can we talk Asians? Many Asians came and settled on the West Coast in California, helped with the mining, helped build the railroads. They helped build the line that connected the East and West Coast, that helped the miners, that helped the ranchers and farmers build big. But there was a lot of Asian discrimination. Population growth in certain parts of Asia put pressure on communities, and many people were like, hey, I can't live here anymore. There's nothing here for me. I got to get out. The Taiping Rebellion forced a number of people out of China. In certain countries like Japan that actually did industrialize, their economy kind of went sour for some of the lower end people, some of the working class people, or some of the skilled laborers whose jobs were replaced by machines. In these Asian communities, skilled laborers started their own business. Skilled laborers did things for their community, and since there was the population that could support that, sometimes they just sold to other Asians. They had miniature communities inside of a larger community that were self-sufficient and supported themselves. The fact that Asians were not allowed to go to white schools for a time was something that was fought and actually won by the Asians. They were able to attend the regular public schools, but it wasn't an easy fight and it wasn't automatic. Many levels of discrimination were faced because of this feeling of nativism. Nativism, just like racism and other isms, sometimes hides itself in rationality. You have political positions that might be concerned about changing economies or population growth that can't be supported. These are real things, these are real concerns. But sometimes nativism will hide itself in that. The restrictions on numbers of certain ethnic groups was another thing that was kind of a mix of the nativism and, just responsible legislation of, hey, we're only going to take a few hundred of these, a few thousand of those, and so many of those every year to particular areas of the United States. And these things were on the books. Literacy becomes an issue, just like literacy was one of the requirements for voting, for economic groups and racial groups. If they can't read and write in their language, if they can't read and write in our language, we don't need them. They're just going to be criminals. They don't have what it takes. Also, there's a push for literacy when they get here. One of the reasons for public schools is because of immigration. Hey, let's push for public school. They're here. Let's teach them how to be American and teach them how to be the best Americans. After public schools become a very common thing, this is a reason why sports are put into public schools. We got these immigrants. Let's put them on teams and teach them what this community is about. They're going to fight and they're going to play together. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below. We'll see you next time.